We are in Nairobi, Kenya, more specifically Kibera. It is infamously known as one of the biggest slums in Africa. And when you look at it, it's easy to see why. I mean, people are packed into really small shacks in a really small area. And it really goes to show how big the problem of housing in this country is. And I want to begin with someone who actually lives here, Mr. Azura. He tells me his name means navy blue. But you say living here is not so pleasant. Kuishi hapa ni vipi?
Si tunaishi hapa, lakini tunaishi hapa kuvumilia tu. Juu tunalipa nyumba, hakuna choo, hakuna bafu, hata ile maji tunatumia hatujui inatoka wapi. Serikali kama imekuja na mradi ya kutuinua, tutashukuru. Na kama wewe ungefunguliwa mahali leo, yani malaika atue chini ya kuambie hii ndio nyumba ambayo nataka kukuundia, ndoto yako ni kuishi mahali kama wapi? Nyumba inakaa vipi? Mimi so long as nyumba iko na maji, iko na choo, niko comfortable, sina stress ingine.
So we've just heard Azura saying to us, Ruth, I'm going to come to you because you're a lawyer advocating for more low-income housing. Yes. There's no dignity in the kind of life that he's describing, but somebody might think, well, it's just in Kibera, it's just a slum. Yeah. Is it like this across the country?
Well, the World Bank statistics show that 60% of the population in urban areas actually live in slum areas, which means only 40% of the population, for instance, in Nairobi County or Nairobi City, can be able to afford proper housing as well as have sanitation and also have, waste collection, because the right to housing, as entrenched in the Constitution, it is an economic and social right.
Okay, so I just want to do a quick test here. The people who are with me, how many of you live in a house where you would say, I have everything I need? I have proper sanitation, water, just by show of hands. Okay, so not a big number. So, man, Tim, hold on one second. Tim, where is the problem? I mean, you are in the construction business. Your work is to ensure that not only do we have housing, but they're proper houses. So where is the problem all these years?
So clearly, I mean, Africa is growing so rapidly. They say that Africa is the last growth frontier. And today we have 1.3 billion people in Africa, which means that every single second you have a baby being born in Africa.
Excuse me?
That's the truth. Every single second we have a baby. So we've been here for the last 2 minutes. You already can count the number of babies. In Kenya, you're looking at having possibly 2 to 3 babies every single minute. So as the country grows, as we grow rapidly in Africa, we do need to have housing. I mean, right now we are talking Nairobi alone needs 2 million houses for families like the Azuras. They need 2 million that is already pending. Every year we need 200,000. We really must be building.
But at the moment, how many are we building? We need 200,000 every year, but how many are we hitting?
So we are only building, so private developers are building just under 50,000, which means that we are always falling far behind. So the housing pledge by the government to build 500,000 houses, for them to achieve that, we need to be doing as a country at least a house every single minute. We need to be doing like 60 houses in an hour, which means by the time we finish this show, we need to have 60 houses. And that's because also, when we finish this show, we will probably have 150 children born in Kenya.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. All right, so everything is sounding a little depressing right now, but just to establish the parameters, when we talk about affordable housing, for the people who are watching in the background, what does that mean to you, affordable? Give me a price range. What does that look like for you?
Affordable housing will be something like that's really low, like less than...
What's that for you?
Less than 5,000, I think, which is like $50.
$50 for rent? Surely, don't you think that's a little too low? Is this practical?
Do you know why it's a little too low? Because most people in Kenya have a bare minimum salary of like 10,000 Kenya shillings. I'm not talking about myself, but most people have a bare minimum salary of like 10,000 Kenya shillings. So with this 10,000 Kenya shillings, you have to pay school fees, you have to buy food, you have to pay rent, you have to, like, literally most people in Kenya are living for the rent.
So would we move, because in Kibera there were these houses which were built, you remember? And then people moved into them and then they moved out of them. So Margaret, I ask you, if the government comes here today and says, ndio hii nyumba nimekupatia, iko na maji, iko na stima, lakini wewe mshahara, at the end of the month give me 5,000, would you move in there?
No.
No?
No,
Why not?
seriously, because according to kama mimi ni housewife, sina kazi, si ndio? Alafu na kenye mzee anapata ni kiasi. Ndio naweza enda kwa hiyo nyumba ndio, but sasa nikiona imeshindikana, afadhali nirentishe hiyo na nirudi huku bali.
You're nodding. So
And you see, the challenge is that what happened with slum upgrading that took place in Kibera, what happened was that the houses were supposed to actually be given to the persons who are living in Kibera. But then the challenge becomes that the middle class now take advantage and realize, okay, these houses are actually, the first ones, the ones at Nyayo high-rise houses, yeah, they were supposed to be given to the persons who are living in Kibera. But then now they were now being sold, yeah? And the middle class came in and realized that they are being sold at a very affordable price for us who are middle income earners. And so what do? We buy them and we start renting them out at exorbitant prices as exorbitant as $200. I mean, the ordinary salary for most people living in Nairobi is around $150 to $100. This house does not come guaranteed with water. I mean, even if it will cost you $50, you still have to pay for electricity. You still have to cater for utilities. You still have to cater for water. So that even makes it more expensive. So I think even that $50 is still very exorbitant for someone living in Kibera or
Okay.
Maybe wish to come into this.
Yeah. 1 second. Please come into this
I would
conversation.
wish to come into this and precisely on the slum upgrading program. I've lived in Kibera for over 20 years and I see what people are doing. It is not about things not happening. It is about the mentality that people have. People are moved into good houses, clean houses. But then if you look at the houses now, 10 years later, they're very dirty. You can't even compare them to what the slums is.
But Ruth
And
is
then
saying, one
second,
second, because this is a debate. Because this is a debate, let's engage.
Yes, please.
Because Ruth is saying that these homes were provided for the people they were supposed to be for,
Yes.
but gentrification happened. And we've heard from Margaret, who herself has said, leo nikipewa nyumba na serikali, nitahama.
No, Edith, this is a thing we will not want to forget. When these houses are supposed to be made, people come, they are recorded, and then they're given like letters. After they are done, you'll come into these houses with these letters. The people themselves are selling the letters so that these people who are actually well off a bit can buy the houses with the letters. So if they kept their letters and moved into their houses, there's a plan. The government is doing it very well. You pay a rent of $2,500 for a single room for 25 years. You own the house. So who can't pay $2,500 and yet they come back to live in a tin house to pay $2,500?
So we're corrupting the system.
It's the system that is
Edith, I don't think we should forget that you cannot have an housing debate by not discussing livelihood. You cannot separate people from livelihoods. You really must worry about income per capita. How can you make sure that even as you create infrastructure and build houses, people have a higher income? The significant problem we are discussing, you have gentrification, you have a problem with people moving out and letting the same houses they have because they don't have income. With $200, you are already in top 30 percentile of the country. So I think we need to discuss the larger question of how can we improve productivity, how can we improve income, how can we improve opportunity so that when people now have jobs and they earn a bit more, they are able to say, you know what, I can actually pay $50 that she says is a bit more difficult to pay. It's difficult now because there is no income. But if we manage to create industry, spa industry, make this environment a better environment, you can only live in a good house if you can have income.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I feel like there's someone who wants to say something from the back. Please feel free.
I think when we're talking about affordability, we have a fixed mindset that is about the slums. But the question is, how are we going to create affordability with decency? The issue of sanitation is just as he has said. We have to invest more into our industries so that we can have actually create employment and at the same time produce low-cost materials that can be used to build. I would also think that Kenyans, we have a mentality we have to live in a stone building. Yet, we can have timber houses, we can have container houses like in Spain, or the prefabricated houses that come from China. If we embrace that new technology and how the world is right now, I think that we can be able to tackle the affordable housing crisis.
It's multifaceted. You've just said it, Tim has said it, that we have to look at other parts of society in order to fully address the housing deficits problem. But in your experience, has this happened, the stories you're hearing, where you move somebody into a better facility, a better home, but they just can't afford to live there?
Yes, that's definitely the case here. And if you look at the current plan by the government on the Big Four agenda, which, part of the Big Four agenda of this current regime is to have affordable affordable housing for low-income earners. But then when you look at the plan, it still doesn't make sense because they're saying they're going to provide you with a house, like a one-bedroom house, and you will be able to pay close to, I think, $6,000 in a period of 25 years. You know, the problem with this plan is that are you even guaranteed that you're going to get that house in the first place? And then even with this $6,000 that you're supposed to pay within a span of 20 years, where will you get that money from? So, I mean, as they have said, the right to affordable housing encompasses very many other things. I remember there was once a landmark case in Kenya that was deciding what exactly the right to housing entails, and in this landmark casing, I think it was a case by a lady called Satrose, and 11 other people went to court, and the court tried to define affordable housing as inclusive of the right to dignity, to live in a peaceful environment, you know, to live in an environment that is secure. So if you can afford the house but still cannot afford sanitation, you still cannot afford garbage collection, then the option is, you know what, let me give away this house and go and live in a shack, unless the government now comes up with plans and says, like now the plans that they're coming up with, and says we are now going to do away with slum areas completely. We are going to overhaul them such that even if you want to give out your house and go and live in a slum area, you don't have a choice, because even that slum dwelling will have been done away with. So unless the government comes up with such plans, then the dream and the goal to have this 500,000 houses within 3 years
is going to remain a pipe dream. I want to know who is responsible. Tim, you're an industry player. Have you ever written a paper to the government, the Ministry of Lands and Industrialization, to say this is what we need as a country?
So we have not just in provision of housing alone, but even clean energy. Okay, so that as you build the houses, they need to be resilient. We did a research a while back that showed that buildings in Nairobi are not safe in the event we have an earthquake of Richter 5, Richter 6. Okay, it showed that over the last 20 years, Kenyan contractors have stolen cement and steel. Because if you steal one bag of cement, you probably get like $6 already, you say.
So we're coming back to the issue of corruption again, yeah?
Exactly. So we do certainly need to worry about corruption. We need to worry about implementing the existing law to make sure that our environment is conducive for industry.
But because you know this, and you know, I'm really coming back to this, you have all this information, you're giving us all these statistics, but what have you done? You're also a Kenyan citizen in order to hold the government accountable.
So we are a business. So as a business, we employ now more than 100 young people. Okay, we have an average team of 25 years, probably older than many African young people. We are doing what we can, working with apprenticeship, paying people as much as $300 to try to make sure that they have an internship with us, and as they can learn skills. Even if we never employ them, they can go out there and they can be artisans.
Okay.
I don't really agree with what Ruth said, that you need to ban slums. You cannot really ban slums. In Cairo last year, for 2 years, only within 2 years, slums in Cairo increased from 2 million to 12 million because people need houses.
But in Kenya, and I really want to ask you this question, because you've said 20 years you've lived in Kibera, but now under this constitution, there's devolution. You could live anywhere in this country and still have access to the resources in Nairobi. Have you ever considered moving out of urban centers?
No, the reasons I'm actually still living in Kibera is because I'm a student and I go to school in town. And the proximity between Kibera and town is just very easy for me to sail through always. And so thinking forward, maybe after university, I'll move out. But then the thing here is, and I'm very much concerned every time we mention the government, there's a rhetoric that Kibera is poor. That is a very big lie, I can tell you for free. I know of millionaires that live in Kibera and they're comfortable living in those tin houses. Today, a new tin house is costing over $45 just a month. And people are paying them. You see, 15 years ago, they were only single story. That's ground floor. But now, look at it. Just have your cameras and look at it.
So what are you saying? That people are choosing to live here and live like this?
Yes, people are very comfortable. The only thing that I can say the government should be doing in this thing all is planning. The slums only need to be planned. People are comfortable paying 4,500 shillings Kenyan, which is $45. And if we say people are living under $1 a day, then are we saying people, how are they surviving here?
I have to come back to Azura because he's currently living here. Azura, mwenzangu pale anasema people in Kibera are millionaires, that you guys are comfortable. It's fine. The way it is here.
Mimi ile kitu naanza sema siwezi enda kwa nyumba venye ndugu yangu amesema ya 1400 na mimi mwenyewe mshahara yangu ni 10,000. Nikilipa 4,500 nabaki na pesa ngapi? Watoto nasomesha na nini? Ushago sijajenga. Kumaanisha sitaenda ushago. Hiyo mimi hata nyumba zikijengwa hapo waseme nilipe 4,500 siingi.
Nataka kupatia, I think there were some few hands here. Yes, you had said something.
I would like to chip in.
Yes.
And I would like to differ with him because, you know, he's a student. That one is a parent. He knows better than him. He's saying...
but you can't take away his experience.
But I'm saying, because he's a student, his parents is the one who's paying the rent, isn't it?
Presumably.
No.
Well, he says no. He says no.
Okay,
he says
even
he's
if
paying
it's
his
him,
own rent.
even if it's him, we have got estates which is near town than in Kibera, the place where he can walk, but they're still also living in shanties. So he should also, if he's saying that this one, not even Milimani, we have Ziwani. Near Mudhuru,
Okay.
we have Mudhuru.
So, you know, for our viewers who do not understand what these places are, they're just small towns, we can say, near the central business district, which also tend to be more expensive than the ones which are further away. So you're suggesting...
You see, another thing is because he's used to the place. Even me, if I'm used to this place, I'll not move because this is the place I was born, I grew up. So moving out, it'll be difficult to me. That's the problem. We need to give people civil education, tell them where to move, why they should move, so that they can develop this area.
All right, so what I'm hearing many things. Tell me if I'm wrong. I've heard that, number one, government is not providing enough housing. Number two, the houses they provide are too expensive and we are also corrupt. And we're also saying that we're comfortable. We actually don't mind. Am I wrong? So is there really a housing problem or are we just, what are we saying here?
Yeah, I would start by saying that there actually is a housing problem in Kenya. Out of the city, and if you go out of the city, there's so many people who are living in houses that are deplorable. And this right to housing doesn't just come as housing. There is sanitation, there is water that you're supposed to get that is actually very good. And there's also the right to health. And you asked about responsibility. It is solely the responsibility of the government to provide these things in collaboration with international players and investors and all these other people. The only thing that is the problem is the goodwill that is coming from the government. Most of these people that we elect to go and represent us in government are people who are corrupt, people who would want to eat out of getting us these houses, which is our constitutional guarantee. And that is basically the whole problem.
So then you've told me that politicians are responsible. They're solely responsible for provision of these resources. And yet you are the ones who elect the corrupt ones. So surely, aren't you responsible?
Didn't say politicians are responsible. The government is responsible. The government is perpetual. Politicians come and go after every elective period.
Okay, so we're here advocating, you know, the youth, our stand, our position. Are we really holding our government accountable? Who is going to solve this?
Well, okay, I think the first thing that we need to do, especially when it comes to our elected leaders, is one of the mandates of our elected leaders is to come up with legislation. We really don't have a legislation that would ensure that economic and social rights such as housing are actually implemented. So we don't have a legislation in place. And one of the functions of the parliament is to come up with legislation that says, okay, so this is how we are going to implement housing across the country. And that's where even the problem of slum areas slum shanties and slum dwellings can actually be done away with. When we have a proper piece of legislation that says that this is how we are going to implement it, and this is the period of time that it will take. And I understand that the Transport and Public Works and Housing Committee is actually responsible for pressuring the government or basically playing an oversight role over the government to ensure that the same is implemented.
All right. So Ruth is saying that we need better legislation, but there's a lady at the back who is vehemently disagreeing with her. And I'm asking, who's responsible for resolving this crisis?
We are all responsible for resolving this crisis. It's not just an opportunity to blame the government. There are three people involved to solve this housing crisis. There's the government, there's the private sector, and there's the community. The three players have very different roles to play. For example, the government can provide land through land banks, land trusts. The private developers who have unfortunately had the fortune of making greed take over purpose and reason should now build not just to recoup so fast, but should see housing as an investment to pay for itself in over a long period of time. And then the community, giving an example of one in Canada, Calgary. They get land from the government and build for these people living in slums or people who do not have affordable housing. And it has gone a long way to help. Right now, they have helped 150,000 people to achieve affordable housing. So I think it's collaborative efforts from the government, the private sector, and us, the community, that will help us solve this menace of a housing crisis.
Okay, and given that you've given us such a good breakdown, at the moment, do you think we're fulfilling that quota as the community?
No.
Where are we failing?
We are failing in discriminating, and, for example, if I do not come from Kibera, I won't see any need to help these people put up an affordable housing with decency. That's the fail from my community. But for example, the people who live in Karen and all those places, they have money, they have everything. They can at least bring a chunk of their portion to charitable works and put up decent things to help the people in the slums.
Okay,
but she's advocating that she's advocating for a socialist.
There's a gentleman here who's saying, let's be honest. I like honesty. Let's be honest.
There's a big problem here. Yeah, there's a landlord-tenant relationship which is unequal, right? Very predatory, very exploitative. That today a landlord will come put up a structure here and say the rent will be 10,000, 15,000. Yeah. How can this person justify that this rent is supposed to be this much? Because first of all, they don't pay for externalities, noise pollution, the dust. What we need is a government policy or a law which is going to set up caps, rent caps, depending on the area.
And we would have been very happy to ask the government about this, but unfortunately we invited quite a number of officials, actually, all of whom said they, for some reason, couldn't be here today. But it's all right. We've heard that we have to be responsible legislation. But, you know, hearing all these things, it's kind of hard to imagine that we will ever get out of this cycle. Looking at the future and the industry, do you see any possible solution out of this?
I think there is a unique policy window now in Kenya. I mean, we already have a government that truly, at least is articulating the problem. And they are saying we have a problem. We want to build 500,000 houses. They are doing everything they possibly can, not just for Kenyan citizens alone, but even to attract capital. We had the total of proposals that were received, I believe, were more than $20 billion. So you can already even see international community saying, you know what, Kenya, which is why I would not agree for rental controls, because if you now control rent, it's no longer free market, and where there is no free market, there will be no free capital. You would have to get cheap capital. I think Kenyan government should continue to push for policy that allows and attracts capital, because until people are making money providing decent housing, it will be very difficult, because even as a country with our wage bill, with the debt that we have, it's highly unlikely that the government can fund housing in the coming years. So we really must rely on private sector.
Right.
We must rely on multilateral partners. And that's the opportunity, because then we can partner with international companies, and then a significant component of the local can create jobs for young people. Because if we are talking about 77% of Africans being young, you need to create opportunities. The only way to solve housing is to create income.
Okay, yes, gentlemen.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of listening, and
Yes?
I think it's time
So
now.
you have a really solid solution.
Yeah, I
for
do a
us.
lot of listening.
Okay, what can you and I do?
Solutions.
Yeah.
First, you asked about our role towards achieving the affordable housing.
Correct.
We've done a lot of research. We go back to the universities, there are a lot of research papers lying in the departments, waiting to be disposed. Don't you tell me that those research don't have recommendations that the government can use? Now, look at this. Tell me the land area that these houses are covered, and compare with the land area these houses are covered. How many units are there, and how many units are there?
So
how is that? That's a policy. The government should make policies. I don't think they have policies. And if
Okay.
they have, are they implementing the policies?
That's really
and then
interesting.
another solution is, she said there are six stakeholders that can really help achieve this affordable housing. She mentioned community. The mentality is so deep that it requires civic education, so that they be told this is what's happening, this is what we should do to achieve what we really want.
Thank you. Those are some really interesting points. Solutions.
I have heard the story of corruption cutting across every time. And I think we've, as Kenyans, normalized corruption. And we think it is right that we looted and then we keep quiet. As a grassroots activist, I am now tempted not to wait for the likes of Kinaboni Mwangi on the big organizations to come in and start fighting for me from the slums. Like he said, civic education is going to work. And we as grassroots activists are already starting to provide that. We want people to come out and speak for themselves. We are not going to normalize anything anymore. We want the government to understand that they are making policies, but when they're implementing them, they are looting us. Now we don't want to be looted anymore. And they will see us on the roads, they will see us with placards, and they will see us even go for hunger strikes anytime soon until they can deliver everything they promise, and they deliver it to our favors.
Thank you very much. That's all we had time for. And this is the beautiful thing about the 77%. The issues are real, and that's why people get angry. But so are the solutions. And unfortunately, we didn't have a key player here, government. They weren't able to be here, but I sure hope they were watching this, because there are a lot of solutions, and it looks like it's an uphill task for them. And as we've heard, for the 77%ers. Thank you for watching.